The cheapest twin turbo 300ZX is back from the paint booth, and it looks really good. Well, almost really good. I bought this 300ZX 7 months ago for $3,800 on Facebook Marketplace, and you guys have watched me rebuild it piece by piece. And just a few weeks ago, we tried to paint it in my driveway, but the weather had another plan. But in today's video, we aren't letting anything stop us from getting this car painted by the end of the video. Luckily, the primer had enough time to flash before it got wet, so it didn't do any damage. However, since we let that first coat dry, we have to sand it back down so that we can spray another coat or it won't stick. Then we blew off all the dust from sanding and we remasked the car. Looking at the skies, it feels like the weather is going to cooperate with us a lot more today. From there, we got back to spraying the 2K high build primer. This is going to fill in all the last little imperfections since it's basically like a paintable body filler. Once we finished the chassis, we moved on to the side skirts and the lip, as well as all the other body parts like the bumpers, the fenders, and the hood. And even all the small pieces like the door handles and mirrors. Once that flashed, we sprayed a guide coat around the car before we pulled the masking. You can use any contrasting color paint for this, but it's going to help a ton when you block sand. Once the guide coat was down, we carefully pulled off the masking since when we actually paint the car with color, we are going to mask it a bit different. But before we sanded, I let everything dry overnight in my driveway. I started off with the fenders since they were brand new and would be some of the easier parts to block sand. Here I'm using a powdered guide coat and 320 grit sandpaper. The heavier the guide coat goes on, the rougher the surface is. Once I got everything flat with a 320 grit, I reapplied the guide coat and sanded with 500 grit to give a nice smooth surface for the paint to go onto. And one thing I learned in auto body is when you think you're done sanding, go ahead and grab some sandpaper because you are never done sanding. I moved on to sanding the body kit and the bumpers, which are some of the hardest because of all the corners and body lines. And when I was sanding the door fillers, I noticed there was a big divot in one side. I mixed up some flexible filler and then I just filled it in and block sanded it smooth. Now it was time for one of the most important pieces, which is the hood. This is what everyone sees and gives a first impression, and unfortunately we have done a lot of work to this hood, so it took some time to get it flat. I started with 180 grit paper here and worked my way up. By the time I was done, there was still some slight high and low spots, and we found that to be the case in a few other spots, so we filled them in. And since we ended up doing some more body work and there was still some high and low spots, there were some areas that we have to hit one more time with primer. So here we are late night pushing it back out of the garage for primer, and then we had to mask it again for the third time. Since Brandon's been putting in all these hours after work to help me with this build, I figured tonight would be a good time to surprise him with his first Wagyu steak. While he sprayed the primer, I fired up the steaks. I found that a lot of car guys are just like me. They enjoy good barbecue and good steaks. And although I get a ton of offers for some sponsorships, I rarely take them as most of them don't align with me. So today's sponsor is actually me. If you enjoy my videos and want to continue to see me build cars all while upping your steak and barbecue game, go to chefjoni.us and buy a Perfect Sear. We guarantee no torch or gas taste, and it's one of the best ways to get a steakhouse quality meal right at home without expensive equipment. And like I said before, if you think you're done sanding, grab the sandpaper. I guide coated the hood one more time and sanded it down, and then it was time to wash it. Since we're painting the radiator support, I went ahead and drilled out the vent plate so we didn't have to mask around it, and then I sanded down behind it. Then I pulled it out of the garage so we can wash it and get it ready for paint. As you can see, the hood is still not perfect, so we may need to coat it one more time with primer, but we'll worry about that later. First, I blew off as much dust as I could while it was dry. Then I used dish soap and my pressure washer to get rid of as much dust as possible. I rinsed off all the other body panels and washed them with some dish soap. With the car dust free and clean, it was time to finally mask the car for the final time before we paint it. This is a long process, so we did it the night before to give us more time to spray in the morning. We ended up spraying the hood with primer one more time, but it was still gummy after we masked the car, so we'll have to sand it in the morning before we paint. The next day, Neil and his brother Alan showed up with their brand new 28-foot enclosed trailer to tow the Z to the paint booth that I rented. What's up, man? John.
John, Neil.
Nice to meet you.
It's my brother Alan. Yeah.
Alan, good to meet you. Check it out.
Oh, yeah, dude.
This is where we're at. We're just last minute trying to get everything done.
You're a lot taller than you look online.
Really? Yeah. This was such a full circle moment because they had previously rented the 997 from the previous owner at a track before I bought it. This was their first time seeing the 997 since I restored it. Yeah.
You did a great job on it.
Yeah. It's filthy, but
You, when you first got in it, did you notice
steering wheel, like I told you.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, dude, it was so clapped.
Yeah.
There was nothing.
The cheapest GT3.
After we chatted for a while, we got to loading the Z on the trailer. I'll admit I'm not the greatest at driving stick, and it was on an incline on top of the trailer being a bit slick, so it was comedy for everyone as I try to get it on the trailer. While all this was happening, Brandon sanded the last coat of primer off the hood, and then we finally headed to the booth. We finally arrived at Manny's shop where the rental booth was. If you live in Phoenix, this place is awesome. I'll tag his Instagram, but Manny makes custom manifolds and fab work, and he also rents out his paint booth for only $150 a day. This is where we painted the Porsche project as well. And if you guys have been wondering who's been helping me, it's Brandon. He's also known as Painter Bam on TikTok and Instagram. He's taught me everything I know about paint and bodywork, and he's also the one who painted my Porsche project. If you're looking for a paint job on the low or you need some help getting some bumper repair done, make sure you reach out to him to get a price. From there, we got to unloading the car from the trailer and packing all the supplies and body panels. That belt wheel is heinous. So bad. And since we masked the car last night, all we pretty much had to do was bag the car, and once we bagged it, we cut everything out and taped it up. We also hung up the hood so we could paint both sides of it at the same time. But before we started spraying anything, I wiped down the entire car with wax and grease remover and then hit it with a tack rag. We're using a 2-part sealer to cover up the high build primer. This means you have to add a catalyst which creates a chemical reaction to cure it, creating a more durable finish. From there, we got to spraying the sealer. We covered the entire car, including the radiator support, since we're repainting that as well. Once everything was sealed, we gave it time to really flash before moving on to the base coat. This took about 20 to 30 minutes, and I decided to do the roof in black on this car. We mixed up some base coat with thinner and started spraying. I think it will look a lot better since it's just the bar above the windshield and above the rear glass, and will hopefully just blend into the T-top glass. We also resprayed the T-top bar and the bases for the mirror in some black. But now is finally time for the real base coat. I'm using Omni Plus by PPG. It's a DIY value line paint, but I figured since it's made by PPG, it should be pretty good. The paint and clear coat ran me about $700. We first measure out the base coat, which is Nissan Aztec Red, and then we added in the slow reducer. The base coat does not have a hardener in it, it just uses the reducer. By the time we did all that, the roof had enough time to flash and we masked it off. And now is finally time to start laying down the paint. The satisfaction this brought me after so many hours of sanding and preparation was unmatched. I was super happy with the way the red was starting to look. This was the same color as my brother Z, which is a major inspiration to this whole entire build. I feel like keeping the OEM color just makes this car so much more valuable for resale. Not to mention doing a color change can be very difficult as there's always signs of its past life unless you completely strip the chassis. When we went to start spraying the hood, we realized a fly had landed and got stuck in the sealer. Brandon used a piece of tape and we got that thing out of there, and we went on to spray the base coat onto the hood. Once the first coat had time to flash, we went around with 1,000 grit sandpaper and sanded out the dust nibs. These are pretty much inevitable whether you're in a booth or in your driveway, but if you sand them now, it'll save you time and work on the back end when you wet sand and buff. After tacking it off again, we got right back to laying down the second coat. We did 3 full coats of red since we used a white sealer and the paint coverage was really good. It was now time for the clear coat. I'm using the same Omni Plus clear coat by PPG, and we're again using the slow hardener to help it flow out a bit as we spray it. When we unmasked the black, there were some small imperfections, so Brandon went ahead and touched it up real quick to make sure it was perfect. And finally, we could start clear coating the car. This is where all the shine comes from. It's important to do this right or you'll end up with runs to make more work for yourself when you sand and buff. Brandon has such a good understanding of the technique, he's able to cake it on to give us plenty of clear for when we wet sand and buff. It's truly one of the most satisfying things to watch. And when he was done, I could not believe it was the same car. The paint and clear coat laid down so nicely and there honestly wasn't too much trash in the paint. You may have noticed many of the body parts missing, and it's because we're spraying them separate. So we shut down the booth, and we'll be back tomorrow. When we came back in the morning, the clear didn't die back at all, really. It looks so freaking good. I really couldn't believe it was finally painted and how good it turned out. but now it was time to unmask the car so we can pull it out and move the rest of the panels in. Before we pulled it out, we placed the fenders back on the car, and then we placed the hood down and secured it in place with a hinge to make it all easier for transport. It was really starting to look like a Z, and I was starting to see my dream finally come true. But we still had a long day ahead of us. I started up and I pulled it out of the booth to make room for everything. The booth rental includes all these panel stands and hangers, so we got everything set up. I wiped everything down with wax and grease remover and a tack cloth. And since some of these parts have black paint on them, we're going to use this vinyl tape. We taped off the mirrors to make sure there was a nice precise line, and we did the same thing to the wing. Then I covered everything with a coat of adhesion promoter from Bulldog. We used the same 2-part sealer to cover all these parts before spraying the base coat. Once the sealer flashed, we went right back into the red base coat. And for everyone who says this isn't a DIY paint job, here's video proof of me spraying. The truth is, I'm better at filming and Brandon's better at spraying paint. Once all the base coat was down and flashed, I peeled off the masking from the black pieces so we could spray clear coat over everything. We got right into the clear coat, and this day was a lot easier than spraying the chassis and the hood. But nonetheless, it was still super satisfying. We wrapped up right around 12:30, but we needed to let all this dry before we could take it back home, so Brandon and I hit some lunch at the local sushi spot. After about 3 hours, we decided to risk it, and Neil and Alan came back to tow it all home. It was still slightly tacky, but we had no choice. We loaded up the Z, placed all the body parts on some towels, and got the trailer loaded up. This was the most nerve-wracking drive, not only for me, but for Neil and Alan as well. Thankfully, we made it home safe with very limited carnage. And then I could finally pull the Z into the garage where it will stay until it's completely done. So the Z is finally home and painted, and I cannot believe the journey that I've been on with this car. From all the mechanical work and the complete transformation of the interior, and now with the paint being done, we are finally in the home stretch. I'm gonna let the paint cure a little more for the next couple of days before I do the final assembly, and then we have some very special wheels that are gonna go on this car. If you haven't already, make sure you check out Brandon and Manny's page if you need any paint work or a booth rental. And if you wanna support the channel, make sure you subscribe or buy a Perfect Sear at chefjoni.us, and I'll see you guys next week.